Hi, welcome to Founder Bounty. Today we have Oliver from Spartan. Feel free to give a quick introduction to yourself.
Hi, Vladler. It's always good to get together with you, and it's been a while, so it's an absolute pleasure to be here. So, firstly, thank you very much. Secondly, who I am and who Spartan are. So, I run and own a company called Spartan International Group or Spartan International Executive Search. We're a global executive search firm that focuses very, very much on financial services. And for anyone who wants to know the specific nature, it's global equities. So we work very much with banks, brokerages, and also the buy side as well, so asset managers and hedge funds.
Got it. Got it. Okay, so I wanted to concentrate a little bit about how you got your company to where it is. Really, as a founder, from the early stages, what got you into this specific area, and how hard was it, and how do you differentiate your company? And maybe you could talk us through a little bit about how it all started.
It's interesting. So even recently, I had conversations with my family, which are a pretty big impact on possibly why I'm here today. I think mentality and potentially how you're brought up has a lot about whether you'll be potentially an entrepreneur or not. I've found that it's almost in families' DNAs to be entrepreneurial, maybe be slightly
Mhm.
more of a risk taker, or although I don't necessarily like to use that word particularly. But I think in my DNA, I followed my grandfather, who was extremely successful, literally had no education, built a company from scratch. He was exceptionally successful. Successful in say a financial mentality, and success is very very different for a lot of different people, which is why I
Different time, yeah.
picture him with the financial side. But really, we'll come back to success because it's a big factor of where I believe people need to focus or should focus. But I think really with me, it was ingrained. I never really loved taking specific direction from people. And I just had a genuine feeling that it was the right thing for me to do. And when you're working in an industry where you don't necessarily agree with some of the daily natures of what
Hmm.
goes on around you, and you want
Hmm.
to do better, you want to be better. It was a big driver of me to make my own mark, which is something that I still believe I'm doing today. It's something that I think most people who know me will say I'm fairly different from the rest of the crowd. And on the basis that we've built this company, or I built this company, on the basis that we care about people, and we're here to help people. That's our first and foremost. Obviously, you don't get paid specifically for that, but again, that shouldn't be the driver for something that you're
Hmm.
doing in
Hmm.
your
Hmm.
career, in your company. And I think there's a focus where most entrepreneurs or most business owners, the reason they have their company, it's because they want to do it their way. They have a way that they believe is special, it's different, it's differentiated, it's certainly individual to them. And that's
Yeah.
something which is exceptionally important to me. Which is why I've written a couple of books recently, which I think I'll come on to a little bit later as well.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Having been a founder myself and having worked with a lot of founders, every founder has their specific reason why they're trying to do what they want to do and accomplish where what they're trying to accomplish. So everyone has their specific reason for doing what they want to do. But what specifically drove you to this area? What did you have some kind of background in it? Did you was there a friend that introduced you? Like, if you could talk us through a little bit more about that.
So it's kind of a fewfold is probably the best way of how I got here. I do believe there's a definite path that we end up following, and serendipitous moments come along. So I've always been a fan of the stock market. I've followed it from afar for a long time, even from a very young age. Films, they were always probably highlighted with the boiler rooms of the world, and obviously Wall Street, and
Hmm.
most recently Wolf of Wall Street, which was probably one of the classics in that area. And
Mm,
it's, it just interested me in regards to the individuals in the market. Um, and obviously the financial element, I've just very much drawn to what is the center of our Western world and the structure around it. But aside to that, I actually started off in a company called BDO Stoy Hayward, which was at the time, I'm not too sure where it is now, but it was at the time the fifth largest accountancy firm in the UK. And I
right.
really generally enjoyed my time there. And there's a partner I got on exceptionally well with, who I subsequently met about 20 years later on the train, and managed to say thank you just for being kind at that time. And his name's Sammy Delau. So, Sammy, if you ever do hear this, I hope you keep him very well. Um, and, I enjoyed it, but it just wasn't for me. So I ended up moving into recruitment kind of, I guess, through a friend. A guy at the time just felt that it was something that I'd be good at. Um, I wasn't too sure the best angle to take. And moving
Hmm.
away from accountancy to recruitment is a pretty big step to take in many regards. But anyway, I made the move. I took the step, did exceptionally well for the first sort of 14 months of my career. Ended up bumping into this friend who told me about recruitment previously on a train. I can't remember what happened. I didn't feel well one day. It was kind of like a go home about 3 o'clock. Just want to get back early before the rush. And finally enough, the guy was on the train station, in the same carriage. So we basically had a chat from then to when we got home, which was about an hour. And at the end of the trip, he goes, "Look, I'd like to go and meet with my bosses." And I was kind of thinking, well, got nothing to lose. There's always more opportunities. So anyway, that week, in fact, we met, and I remember we met in Waterstones. We had a conversation about the business. It was certainly more aligned to where I was. It was very much more entrepreneurial, and in many respects, it taught me that all you really need at times is a phone and a computer to get you where you are, and your will and desire, and a hell of a lot
Hmm.
of hard
Hmm.
work.
Yeah.
Um, but as long as you've got that and you've got the passion, you're all right.
Mm,
So the long story short, we ended up meeting, and I think 2 days later, they called me as I was going into work and said, "Look, will you come in to see us instead? We want you to join us." So I called in on the way into work. I called in sick, got on a different train that I was currently on, headed a different direction, and started a journey that changed a lot for me, because it just gave me the opportunity to understand that if you want to do something and if you really want to make a genuine mark, you don't need that much around you. You feel you do because there's a fear factor. Um, and that's a lot of most people's problems
mm,
when starting a company. It is fear. And to
agreed.
to
Yeah.
be completely honest, yeah, look, you're right to be somewhat fearful, because
Yeah.
you don't
Absolutely.
know it's going to work. You don't know if you've got a family, you're
Absolutely.
going to be able to look after them, or be able to pay the same way as you've been doing before.
Yeah.
But
And
the
Bill.
other,
Yeah.
yes,
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no. So I was just going to say the last thing I was going to say with that is, my view of that is that if you've been doing a job for a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, and you know that you are good at what you do, you have a client base that is attracted to you, and you have a line of succession behind you, genuine succession. The bottom line is, for most people in their job, if they don't succeed at their job for someone else, they'll get fired. If you don't succeed for yourself, you won't get fired, you just won't have any money. The difference also is, if you are able to succeed for yourself, you probably need to generate about a third of the amount of money you would do for working for someone else to be in the same position. So sometimes starting your own company is less of a risk than most people think it is. It's just whether they've got that will and desire to go and do it every single day for the rest of their
Well,
time.
yeah, no, I think that's a really interesting way to look at it. I've never actually thought about it like that, but that's very, very interesting. And I think what scares people the most is that lack of security, that lack of knowing where they're going to go. And on top of that, that loneliness that you do get when you're an entrepreneur trying to build a company, right? It is a very lonely journey. It is a very difficult, monotonous, you don't really have any security. And so you do have to be a certain kind of character to be able to push forward, and no matter what it takes, if you're running your own business, no is simply not an answer, right? And a solution, there has to be a solution to everything you're doing. No is just not going to work. So whatever it really takes, right, to push the business forward.
Mm,
I mean, how does
absolutely.
this apply? How does this apply in specifically to, let's say, the niche that you're working in, and how hard and competitive was it when you were trying to build it, from scratch? Because it is a very, let's say, saturated market, in that respect, right?
Mm. Yeah. So, firstly, I'll start with something which I mentioned before, and I greatly believe this word and the understanding of for self is massively important to anything you do in your life, and that's success.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I've had this conversation with loads of people before, and people would say, "Oh, you've been really successful, and you are really successful." And I, for a long time, questioned questioned what they were saying. To be fair, um, because of what the success meant, or what I think the perception of the success meant from their side. For me, I've got a long term mentality, which is partly the reason why I think I'm suited to be an entrepreneur. Is the fact that I know where the long term goal and aim is. It
Hmm.
also
Hmm.
means that in any one moment, I'm never bored. I'm never frustrated. I always look for opportunities, and I always want to do
Right.
more.
Hmm.
Um, but it also means that if I want to sit in the garden to do my work, or have a coffee somewhere, or go and play, for what I do, I don't play golf because of my back, but I'll talk about that in a minute. I play foot golf with my friends, and foot golf is amazing. You get out and you're walking and you're out in the fresh air. These things are important, and that's the element of being an entrepreneur, is that you can pick and choose your time. But to emphasize the work and the effort that goes into it, for me, it took me. Well, I was 28 when I started my company, which I massively appreciate was young. But that came on the back of about, well, 8 years experience in high-end executive search. And in fact, I started my company with three investment banks invariably backing me and signing me up for mandates day one of my business. So my first 4 months of my company was absolutely phenomenal. But just because you get the business, it doesn't mean that's all it is. You have to execute. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
my time's no different now to what it used to be when I started the company. I was up all hours of the day, and basically all hours of the night. One of our big franchises in New York, which I take personal pride and a massive amount of care over. Something that we are continuously going to expand. But when there's a 4 or 5 hour time difference, depending on
Hmm. Hmm.
daylight savings, being up 2, 3 in the morning for phone calls is not massively unusual.
I've done it
So
too. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
actually, even when was it? Last night. Yeah, last night. Funnily enough, same thing. Arranging phone calls at 12:30 UK time AM, just so we've managed to have a call today, which we did about 2 hours ago. But for me, it just doesn't matter. I don't care what time it is. If I'm awake, then
Yeah.
I'm involved, and quite happily to be involved, because if you've got a genuine enjoyment for the job and an enjoyment to be involved, I think involved is a really good word. I like being involved. I like being
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
useful. I like being part of something. I like being helpful.
Yeah.
Um, Even as I mentioned before, I think I was actually in 2019, just before lockdown started. I published my first book. Absolutely exhausted by my first book. Got to lockdown. And within 2 weeks of lockdown, I would just say I was thinking I can't be sitting here for the next however many months doing nothing. Started my second book, and by the time we
Mm,
came out of, I think probably the third lockdown in February March time uh, last year, I managed to get a publishing deal, and the book comes out at the end of this year. And for me, those two books are synonymous with who we are, what we do, and how we respect people. People
mhm,
do generally come first. Our clients are the key. There's no question about that. We are here for them. We're here for their employees. And it's important at the same time for us to be there, not just for those and the people that are looking to make moves, but to be there for the whole market, to be a support for the market, to be a service for the market. And that's something which we find is not only a key for us, it's something we enjoy doing. And me specifically, it's something I'll continuously do.
mhm, mhm. No, I think you're absolutely right. I think the key, as you said, is potentially even that personal relationship you have with your candidates. Obviously, you've learned, building this business, what works and what doesn't, just as any entrepreneur. But potentially, that personal relationships you do have with candidates and with the banks you're trying to hire for, maybe that's what really sets you apart. And as you mentioned, you've probably set that out, a couple of those key points in your book. I mean, looking forward to other entrepreneurs, let's say, getting their business off the ground and trying to move to the next level. Is there any particular advice, going through all those years of experience that you've had building your company? Obviously, Jeff Bezos says focus on the customer. Other entrepreneurs have, a focus on the product or whatever it may be. Is there a particular thing that's you've seen working for yourself in your business?
Well, there's a couple of ones. So I actually like Tim Cook's, sorry, Steve Jobs' speech, not Tim Cook, beg your pardon. That I think it was University of Michigan, if I'm right in saying, and he basically highlighted the fact that one of the most important things you can do in your life, whether it's your life or as an entrepreneur, is follow your intuition, follow the
Hmm.
instincts that
Hmm.
are inside you, and that are your personal beliefs, and don't detract from them. Don't be swayed by anyone else. Listen to yourself is the
Hmm.
absolute key, and believe that when you look back at X amount of time, that you'll see all of the dots that you've been through are somehow connected together to get you to where you were and where you are today. And it's a constant belief of mine just to follow what is inside, what is the life source. In my life, it's my soul path, it's my absolute um lifeblood to follow effectively. And I look forward to what comes ahead. I don't want to, and I would never have said this when I was younger, but I don't want to be retired in 5 years. I want to be a continual um, help, assistance, service, to continue building, to continue having opportunities, to continue learning, and to continue giving back at the same time. I think for me,
Hmm.
that's what drives me. It's not having that, which I think would be more fearsome and more fearful of anything else than having it. To
Hmm.
not
Hmm.
be part of the story. So for
Hmm.
any entrepreneurs looking forward, and my mindset, it comes back from, one, believe in yourself categorically, but two, have a passion for what you are doing, because it really
Hmm.
doesn't matter.
Absolutely
If
agree.
if
Yeah.
you if you just enjoy what you do, basically you'll resonate with people at a higher energetic level that will connect with them
Hmm.
at a higher energetic level. And I had a conversation with someone earlier today, and they said, look, I love speaking to what you've just said. You were really energetic and you're really passionate. And actually, I personally didn't think I was being overly energetic or passionate. But I get the essence and the point. It's having that passion for whatever you do, because then you are very, very easily able to have a long term mentality. If you focus on the financials, it is I would say almost 9 times out of 10, extremely short-term focused.
Yeah. No, can I just say, when I was in finance and, we had our conversation, um, I didn't forget you. I've dealt with a lot of recruiters, and actually, you're one of the ones that stayed in my mind. We did have a personal relationship, and it genuinely felt like I guess you do care about your clients and your that you're working for and candidates, and so that was definitely something that stood out to me, and I can see how that really works for people, kind of going on, and that's essentially to a business like yours, right?
Yeah, like, firstly, I really appreciate that. It's very kind of you to say, and obviously, like, it's probably been years since we had the conversations that we did, but that's kind of how this is and how life is. I don't
Hmm.
see people as a dollar sign. I've got 2 kids of my own, a wife, a dog. I can't forget him; he'll get upset. Um, and you know, we are all trying our best. It doesn't matter who you are. It does, even if you are that billionaire with 50 companies or a million companies or whatever it is. Everyone's still trying their best. No one's got it figured out. And the element of, unfortunately, we're all going to die at some point. We're all going to have issues. We're all going to have health problems. We all
Hmm.
may,
Hmm.
many of us are going through these at the moment, which we have to deal with continuously. Um, but being there for people, being on the phone, listening, offering advice. If you can't
Hmm.
help someone directly, by just giving them your time, which is pretty much the most valuable thing you can offer someone,
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
is pretty much the best thing you can do for any individual. So yeah, like, I've always taken a great amount of care with everyone that we've worked with, because I realize it's not just your career. For most people, it's their families' lives, their livelihoods, their homes. And most people may listen to this and think, oh, investment bankers, they've got so much money. You have to understand the relevancy to making more money and living this fantasy life are very, very different. Most people in the financial world make a very good living, but that living doesn't afford them planes and first class tickets and
Absolutely.
Ferraris and whatever it may be. But it offers their family a more comfortable life, maybe a less worrying
Hmm.
life.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and I think it's important to
Absolutely.
highlight that, because I think there's a constant negative connotation around it. You know,
Hmm.
they're there to service, and the financial industry has changed in a way that I believe it's done for the better. I think the mentalities are better, but I do believe there's a huge health and well-being element that we all need to focus on coming out of COVID. Um, it
Hmm.
very much
Hmm.
relates to my second book, which was actually written with a 30th psychiatrist or psychologist as well, an international numerologist, an international healer medium, and a UK rehabilitation centre. And we really cover, the complete holistic health and well-being guide, because invariably in life, most people don't look further than what's in front of them. People go, okay, well, I'll eat well and therefore, I'll be healthy, or okay, I'll eat well and then I'll exercise and I'll be healthy.
Hmm. Hmm.
Well, we are we are 4 separate bodies that we need to continuously look after: the mental, energetic, um, the mental, physical, energetic, and emotional. And in each separate body, um, and we've seen it through COVID. Let's be fair. I think most people have been affected with all 4. I think most people probably don't understand the emotional and the energetic bodies. I don't think there's
Hmm.
been education around it. So what we try and do is break it down and really make it very easy, very accessible, and really highlight the things that you know are out there if you want to find it. But we do the hard work for you, and it's backed by huge amounts of scientific research. And some of the stuff in there is absolutely fascinating with numerology. Um, you know, the number codes that surround us on a daily basis, and I'm sure in your life in banking, you would have seen recurring numbers continuously. But if only we could get people to pay attention to the things around us, I think there's a lot of things that we don't often see. But anyway, that's
Mhm.
the whole story for a completely another day.
Well, plenty more podcasts to come. But so let's talk a little bit about hiring in 2022. I guess some of our listeners would be more than interested to hear about someone who's on the front lines in the trenches of hiring and the hustle and bustle. And feel free to take us through a little bit about what banks and financial services companies are looking for this year. How has that trend potentially changed from last year, and what candidates can do to get hired?
Well, let's say the last 14 months have been a very active 14 months for most banks and businesses. I think across the piece, really. I think the unwinding from COVID, the uncertainty was clearing up, and I think people felt more confident to hire, and two, I think people felt more confident to move. I also believe, and we've seen it with I think basically everyone we've ever spoken to post COVID, is that people's opinions, mentalities, and possibly the localities of their work has changed a lot. Um, so I think people will still look to make moves. I think we're going to see that moving forward. There's absolutely no question moving into 2022. And had the past 3 weeks not have been progressing, I would have said 2022 would be fairly positive. Unfortunately, I feel that the Russian-Ukraine conflict is going to have a pretty decent size impact both on hiring, on restructuring of costs. I think it's going to have a pretty decent effect on the banks themselves, on deal flows, and therefore on revenues and commissions. So I would imagine at this point in time, we can see there being some form of an impact. However, I do say that, and at the same breath, we've got quite a number of hires and clients who are looking to make hires, and it's been pretty simple, whether it's the last 12 months or the last 7 years. People want client base, they want relationships, they want contacts, they want um, an understanding of the product that they've got, whether it's a cross suite of products in what we do, or whether it's focused more on again, being very, very specific on SMID cap equities. So there is definitely a need. There's definitely the opportunity for people to grow, and there's definitely the opportunity for people to make some really strong moves. New York's been very, very busy as well. It's probably been some time since it's been as active, which is very, very positive indeed. I think the European market there is understood, um, very much that it needed a refresh. Again, what we need there is client connectivity, and I think that's really what this market's all about. It's how can you improve, um, well, how can you improve another business? What are you going to bring to the table? This hiring is not about banks often have got a need. It's what can you bring to them? The need is going to be, well, we need to make more money, generate more revenues with the client base we've got, because the client base in banking, as you all know, Vlad, is pretty finite, really. You have accounts that move up and down, and new ones coming in, some closing down, but invariably, it's the same element of accounts. So
Hmm.
people are looking
Yeah.
for better connectivity, and from an
Hmm.
individual perspective, I think people are looking for, I think, one, security, a change, obviously a financial uplift if you can. But I think the market's pretty tight in terms of financial pay at the moment. I think we're in a decent spot. I don't think we're in a massively inflated spot. I think we'll be here for some time. But I do believe we're actually in a pretty decent moment. Hopefully, I can only say hopefully, we do get genuinely a very, very peaceful resolution to the conflict in the Ukraine.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, we hope that obviously it doesn't continue for both a humanitarian reason, obviously for a national reason, a European reason, a global reason. We've seen the impacts that it's had on on Russian funds in the UK, in Europe, in the US.
Mhm.
People losing their jobs on the basis of companies going under and pulling out.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so, there's a real global impact with this, and obviously you've seen the prices of oil and petrol really go through the
Mhm.
roof, and cost of living with energy. So, whilst we are not in the crisis, we are all with. I think I can say this for everyone. We're all with uh, Ukraine and what's going on, and just hope that it does come to a peaceful resolution and it doesn't progress to something much larger. Because obviously, if it does, whether it's you know whether it's European or global, whatever else, you'd be talking about a whole different scenario that no one wants. And
Mhm.
I feel that we're definitely moving into a much more positive scenario. So I'd be surprised if we end up down that route.
No, very interesting stuff. In terms of, let's say, specific advice to that you give to your candidate, specific advice when going into, let's say, that they are potentially looking to move to a competitor, or they're not looking, however, you bring them an opportunity. What specific points would you say would help that candidate if they are looking to move get hired? Is there anything specific that they could focus on, or is it purely really just how much commission do you have, what clients do you have, and we'll hire you? Is there anything additional to that, or is that really just the base?
No, no, no. Obviously, in terms of where the market's been, that's what people are looking for. That
Right.
it is what it is, especially from our side anyway. Now, in regards to advice for individuals, I've always tried to prepare people maybe slightly more than others, make sure people have got the background of the people they're going to meet.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to know the company. You've got to
Mm-hmm.
know what their products are, whether it's financial, whether it's retail or automotive or whatever it might be. You have to know what they do.
Mm-hmm.
You again goes back to what we said before. Ideally, if you've got a passion for the industry, it's pretty important because it will come across better. I often recommend most of the candidates that I work with to buy my first book, The Survivor's Guide to Your Career Today, mainly on the basis for most people, it's aimed at 16 to 25-year-olds, but for an interview scenario, there's about 170 interview questions in there to practice and prepare for. So it's just good to get those questions almost rolling off your tongue more than anything else. And that's where the preparation comes into it. So, I talk about video interviews, how to be prepared for those, or phone interviews, or how to dress,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever it might be. There are a myriad of elements in there, and I think that's the thing with most scenarios. You want to go in full of knowledge. You don't want to go in being fearful. It's like going into an exam. If you haven't studied going into an exam, you're either going in there petrified or you're going in like you
Mm-hmm.
don't care. And it's exactly the same with an interview. If you haven't prepared, you're either going to go in full of confidence and hopefully get away with it, or you're going to go in there terrified, somehow hoping that you're going to get away with it. If you prepare yourself, you're giving yourself an element of confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you might give yourself like, literally an extra 5 or 10% of confidence just by knowing a bit of background about the person you're going to meet. The last year financial accounts, are they healthy? Can you ask a question that actually sounds pretty intelligent that you want to know the answer to? Um, Dress well. Not being funny. I would say 99 times out of 100, I'm in a suit, my tie, it's cuffs, it's a nice hanky even. I feel that giving or wearing, sorry,
First impressions still work, right, Oliver? That's the
yeah, but
absolutely.
it's also how you feel as well. If you
Hmm.
feel like you've got a lovely suit on, well, for me anyway, a lovely suit, nice crisp shirt, a tie that you
Yeah.
really like to wear, maybe even a nice belt, maybe even a nice watch. You piece that all together, it's like a piece of armor. It's not actually. Do you know what? It's not even like a piece of
I
armor.
agree.
It's like
I agree
wearing
with that.
a superhero's costume. You just feel better. You
You
know,
feel
look,
absolutely,
I can tell
absolutely.
you, and this is a very probably sad story to admit, but this is genuinely true. I was in New York a few years ago, and I had all my best gear when I was in between meetings, and a guy kind of stopped me as I was walking down. He goes, "You look really good, nice tie," and I went, "Thank you very much," and I walked on, and I just went, "That's very nice of that man," and he gave me a lift. And that's the kind of thing. It's one of those things where it's as simple as anything else, just making sure you dress nicely. But honestly, it gives you such a boost. It gives you a massive level of confidence.
Yeah,
And as
yeah.
you quite rightly said, first impressions are, pretty key.
Paramount. Yeah. No, I think you've given some great advice to candidates. Know the background, know the financials, know what the bank specifically does, what area they're good at, they're not good at. Give yourself an internal boost, dress well. So I think a couple of those key points, which of course will link your book as well in our interview, so that candidates can go and go out and purchase that. And is there anything else that you would say that you know banks are looking for these days? In addition to all of that, is there any specific thing that would be hot in this year, that particular sector maybe, or particular personality?
Personality is always a difficult one. It's a willing to want, a will to succeed, and a drive to be there. Um,
Hmm.
that doesn't change. I think banks are very much about personality in most things, which is why you often have sports people which move into banking because they've got a very structured mentality. They've got a story to tell, and usually present themselves pretty well at the same time. Banking is a combination of a multitude of factors that you need to have. It's intelligence. It's depending on your position. It's the way you dress, how you hold yourself. It's the confidence to speak in front of others. It's the connection to other people. Um, in other roles, it's the real focus is on the minutiae. It's on the technical element. So on that basis, it's can I tell someone to go to MIT and get a PhD and a doctorate? It's a long process. So there's so many different facets to
Of
focus
course,
on.
yeah.
But one thing that I did touch on before, and I feel that we're coming to the end of this, but I feel it's the important message to lead to people is really think about what success genuinely means, and
Hmm.
means to you personally. Because I would say in most people's career, especially at the early stage, most people would define success as either money, power, or position, effectively. Um, and I would say for most people, money is the one thing that probably hasn't fulfilled them in any way, shape, or form. Gives great opportunities to do other things which may be able to fulfill yourself. But the money itself, it's not enough for most people. But the achievement of getting it, the achievement of completing those deals to get it, if you're a doctor, saving countless lives, the achievement in that is just beyond extraordinary. And
Got it. Yeah.
that's the difference between one success and another. And achievement, winning the Nobel Peace Prize is a massive achievement.
Mm.
Winning an Oscar, winning the Ballon d'Or from someone or for someone, for me, having my books published, that is an achievement which it's something that will always be there. I think that's the achievement. If you have something that's always there, it's always recognized. I genuinely believe most people will feel more and get more from that than most things
Absolutely.
in their
Yeah.
career. It's just
Yeah.
trying to understand for each individual what it is for
What
them.
that is. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, great. Well, no, really interesting stuff. Thank you so much for being on today's show. And we will definitely link your books and hopefully have you again.
Absolutely. No, it's really lovely to speak to you. It's been great to catch up, to see your face again, and to talk about everything banks, careers, and everything in between.
More to come. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Bye bye.
Take care.
Bye bye.